There is a moment in every person's life when they are faced with something they want, something that seems appealing, something that is right in front of them. And in that moment, everything inside them is screaming yes. Their desires are pulling them forward. The opportunity is right there. Nobody would even know. That's the moment that defines you. Today we're going to talk about one of the most powerful tests in Islamic history. A young man, alone in a palace, with a beautiful, powerful woman who wanted him. The doors were locked. Nobody was watching. And what he did in that moment teaches us something profound about the human brain, about self-control, and about why some people can resist temptation while others can't. This is the story of Prophet Yusuf, peace be upon him. And after I tell you what happened, we are going to break down the psychology of exactly how he did it. This is a masterclass in self-control that modern neuroscience is only now beginning to understand. Let's begin. Before we get to that moment, you need to understand how Yusuf got there. Yusuf was the son of Prophet Yaqub, peace be upon him. He was young, he was beautiful, and his father loved him deeply, maybe too deeply, because his older brothers noticed, and they hated him for it. One day, these brothers convinced their father to let them take young Yusuf out with them. Let him come play with us, they said, we'll take care of him. But they had other plans. They took him far from home, and they threw him into a dark, empty well. Then they went back to their father with a lie. They brought Yusuf's shirt, covered in sheep's blood, and said a wolf had killed him. Their father, Yaqub, was heartbroken, but he didn't believe them. He knew something was wrong still. What could he do? His beloved son was gone. Meanwhile, Yusuf was at the bottom of that well, alone, in the darkness, betrayed by his own family. He was just a boy, but Allah had a plan. A caravan passed by. They sent someone to draw water from the well, and they found Yusuf. They pulled him up, but they didn't return him to his family. Instead, they saw an opportunity. They took him to Egypt and sold him as a slave. This is where his life took a turn that nobody could have predicted. He was bought by a high-ranking official in Egypt, a man of power and wealth. This man was known as the Aziz, and the Aziz had a wife. The Quran doesn't tell us her name, but history calls her Zulaykha. Now Yusuf grew up in their household. He went from being a boy to becoming a young man, and as he grew, something became clear to everyone who saw him. He wasn't just handsome, he was strikingly beautiful. The Quran describes him as being given half of all beauty, and Zulaykha noticed. Years passed. Yusuf was no longer a child. He was a young man now living in this palace, managing the affairs of the household. He was trustworthy, intelligent, and yes, incredibly attractive. And Zulaykha, the lady of the house, she wanted him. At first, maybe it was just glances, but eventually, she couldn't contain it anymore. She made her intentions clear. She tried to seduce him, not once, multiple times, but Yusuf always refused. Now put yourself in his shoes for a moment. He's a slave. She is a free woman. She has all the power. He has none. She could make his life very easy, or very difficult. And on top of that, he's a young man with all the natural desires that come with that age. Everything in his situation was pulling him towards saying yes, but he kept refusing. And then came the day that changed everything. The Quran tells us in Surah Yusuf, verse 23, and she, in whose house he was, tried to seduce him. She closed the doors and said, come you. She closed the doors. They were alone in the palace. She had made sure nobody would interrupt. And then she made her move. And here's where we need to pause and really understand what's happening in this moment. Yusuf is standing there. He is young. He is human. He has desires like any man. The most beautiful, powerful woman in the palace is offering herself to him. The doors are locked. Nobody will ever know. There are no cameras, no witnesses, no way he would get caught. Every logical reason to say yes is there, and every emotion in his body is probably screaming at him. But he said something that reveals everything about his psychology in that moment. He said, I seek refuge in Allah indeed. He is my master, who has made good my residence. Indeed, wrongdoers will not succeed. And then he ran. He literally turned and ran toward the door. She ran after him. She was so desperate that she grabbed his shirt from behind and tore it. Just as they reached the door, it opened, and there stood her husband, the Aziz. She panicked, and she lied. She pointed at Yusuf and said, what is the recompense of one who intended evil for your wife but that he be imprisoned or a painful punishment? She accused him. The very thing she tried to do, she accused him of doing. Yusuf could have stayed silent, but he spoke up and said it was she who sought to seduce me. Now it was his word against hers, a slave against a noble woman. Who would anyone believe? But then something unexpected happened. A witness from her own family spoke up. He said, if his shirt is torn from the front, she's telling the truth. But if it's torn from the back, then she's lying and he's telling the truth. They checked. The shirt was torn from the back because he was running away from her and she grabbed him from behind. The truth was obvious. The Aziz, her husband, he realized what happened. He told Yusuf, ignore this. And then he turned to his wife and said, ask forgiveness for your sin. Indeed, you were of the sinful. Yusuf was innocent. The truth came out. You would think that would be the end of it, but it wasn't. Words got into the city. Among the noble women, gossip started spreading. The wife of the Aziz is trying to seduce her slave boy. She must be deeply infatuated. She's clearly gone astray. When Zulaykha heard what the women were saying, she didn't hide in shame. She decided to prove a point. She invited all these women to a banquet at her palace. She gave each of them a knife and some fruit to cut. And while they were sitting there, cutting their fruit, talking, she called for Yusuf. Come out, she said. He walked into the room. And the Quran tells us what happened next. These women, the moment they saw him, they were so stunned by his beauty that they cut their own hands with the knives. They didn't even realize they were bleeding. They were completely overwhelmed. They said, perfect is Allah. This is not a man. This is none but a noble angel. Zulaykha looked at them and said, this is the one about whom you blamed me. And I certainly tried to seduce him, but he firmly refused. But if he will not do what I order him, he will surely be imprisoned and will be of those debased. She was threatening him now, in front of everyone. Either you give in to me, or I'll have you thrown in prison. Think about this. She had been rejected, humiliated. Her reputation was damaged, and now she was using her power to force him into a corner. Yusuf could have given in. He could have thought, I've resisted this long. I've proven my point. Now I'm going to be punished anyway. What's the point? But instead, he made a choice that seemed crazy to most people. He chose prison. He made do it to Allah. The Quran records his words in Surah Yusuf verse 33. He said, my Lord, prison is more beloved to me than that to which they invite me. And if you do not avert from me their plan, I might incline toward them and be of the ignorant. He chose prison willingly over giving in to temptation. And that's exactly what happened. They threw him in prison, an innocent man punished for refusing to do wrong. He would stay there for years. Some scholars say 7 years. Some say more. Years of his life, gone for doing the right thing. But here's what's profound. That prison cell became the place where his real rise began. Because, in that prison, he interpreted dreams. Word of his gift reached Pharaoh. And eventually, he went from prisoner to the treasurer of Egypt, second in command of the entire nation. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's go back to that moment, that locked room, and the choice he made. Because that's where the psychology gets really interesting. Alright, let's pause the story and talk about the psychological aspect of Yusuf's decision. After watching to this point, you might begin to think that he was a prophet and he had special strength. But this is what I want you to also know. Prophets were human. They had the same brain you have, the same desires, the same temptations. The difference wasn't biology, it's psychology. First, let's understand what temptation does to your brain. When you're faced with something tempting, whether it's inappropriate content online, a person you are attracted to, food you're trying to avoid, whatever it is, your brain's reward system lights up. It's a part of your brain called the nucleus accumbens. It releases dopamine, and dopamine makes you feel like you need this thing, like you'll be happier if you have it. But here's where Yusuf did something different. He activated a different part of his brain, the prefrontal cortex. That's the part of your brain responsible for long-term thinking, for values, for self-control. And he activated that by doing exactly what the Quran tells us he did. He reminded himself of Allah. I seek refuge in Allah. He reminded himself of consequences. My master has been good to me. He reminded himself of his values. Indeed, wrongdoers will not succeed. This is called cognitive reappraisal in psychology. It's when you reframe a situation in your mind. You take the temptation and you look at it through a different lens. Instead of this will feel good, he thought this will destroy me. Instead of nobody will know, he thought Allah will know. Instead of I deserve this, he thought I will not betray the trust placed in me. That shift, that reframing, it changes which part of your brain is in control. And then he did the second critical thing by running. This is so important. He didn't stand there trying to resist while staring at the temptation. He didn't try to reason with her. He didn't try to prove how strong his willpower was. He removed himself from the situation, physically, immediately. Modern psychology calls this stimulus control. When you're faced with a powerful temptation, your best bet isn't to fight it head on. Your best bet is to get away from it. Because here's the thing about willpower. It's limited. It's like a muscle. It gets tired. The longer you stay in a tempting situation, the weaker your resistance becomes. Yusuf understood this. So, he didn't try to be a hero. He just ran, and when she grabbed his shirt and it tore, when she accused him, when everything went wrong, he still didn't regret running, because he knew that the temporary consequence of being accused was better than the permanent consequence of giving in. That's long-term thinking. That's the prefrontal cortex winning over the reward system. Now let's talk about the second major psychological moment, when he chose prison over sin. This one is even harder to understand for most people, because it was not a moment of passion, nor was it a split-second decision. He had time to think about this. He knew what the choice was. Give in to her, live in comfort and avoid punishment, or refuse, go to prison, and suffer for years. And he chose prison. Why? Because Yusuf understood something that most people don't. He understood that there are two types of pain in life. There's the pain of discipline, and there's the pain of regret. The pain of discipline is sharp, but it's temporary. It's the pain of doing the hard thing in the moment, of saying no when you could say yes, of going to prison when you could be free. The pain of regret is dull, but it's permanent. It's the pain of looking back and wishing you had made a different choice, of knowing you betrayed yourself, of living with guilt and shame. Yusuf chose the pain of discipline, and yes, it was painful. Spending years in prison is not easy, but his conscience was clear. He didn't want to live with the regret of compromising himself. Psychologists have found that when people reflect on their lives, they don't regret the things they did as much as they regret the values they compromised. They don't regret hardship as much as betraying themselves. Yusuf understood this at a deep level. He knew that protecting his integrity was worth more than comfort, worth more than freedom, worth more than pleasure. And here's what's beautiful. Because he made that choice, because he protected his character even when it cost him everything, Allah eventually elevated him. The prison became the path to the palace. The punishment became the preparation. But even if that had not happened, even if he had stayed in prison for the rest of his life, he made the right choice, because he kept his soul pure. So what does this mean for you watching? You are probably not in a palace with a woman trying to seduce you, but you have your own locked room, your own moment where the doors are closed and nobody is watching. Maybe it's your phone, late at night, one click away from something you know you should not watch. Maybe it's a person, someone at work or school, someone who is not your spouse, someone who's interested in you, and you're interested in them, and it would be so easy to cross a line. Maybe it's money, an opportunity to cheat, to lie, to take something that isn't yours, and nobody would ever know. Maybe it's a substance, alcohol, drugs, something that numbs the pain but you know is harming you. Whatever it is, you have your own locked room, and in that moment, you have the same choice Yusuf had. So, let me give you his strategy, the exact steps he took that you can use. Step 1. Reframe it immediately. The moment the temptation appears, don't debate with it. Don't try to reason with it. Immediately shift your perspective. Instead of thinking about how good it will feel, think about how you'll feel afterward. The guilt, the shame, the disappointment in yourself. Instead of thinking nobody will know, think Allah will know. Instead of thinking about pleasure, think about your values. Think about the person you want to be. This is not just about willpower. This is about perspective. Step 2. Remove yourself physically. Don't try to resist while staying in the situation. If you're about to watch something you shouldn't, close the laptop, leave the room, go somewhere public, or go perform an ablution. If you're with someone you shouldn't be alone with, leave, make an excuse. Protect yourself by removing the opportunity. If it's a substance, get rid of it. Throw it away. Don't keep it in your house thinking you'll resist it. Shaitan is full of deceptions. The strongest people are not the ones who resist temptation. They are the ones who avoid it. Step 3. Accept the temporary discomfort. Here's the hard part. When you resist temptation, it hurts. You feel like you're missing out. You feel the pull. You feel uncomfortable. That's normal. That's your brain's reward system throwing a tantrum because it didn't get what it wanted. But remember, that discomfort is temporary. It will pass, usually within minutes. Your brain will calm down. The urge will fade. But if you give in, the regret is permanent. So accept the discomfort. Sit with it. Know that it's the price of keeping your integrity, and know that it will pass. Step 4. If you have to choose between temporary pain and permanent regret, always choose temporary pain. Yusuf chose prison. You might have to choose something difficult too. You might lose an opportunity. You might lose a relationship. You might lose comfort. But you'll keep yourself, and that's worth more than anything else. Here's what I want you to understand. This story is not just about sexual temptation. It's about any moment where you have to choose between what's easy and what's right. It's about every single moment where you have a choice between your values and your comfort. And in those moments, you have the same tools Yusuf had. Refrain, remove, accept the discomfort. Choose temporary pain over permanent regret. Will it be easy? No. Yusuf went to prison. Doing the right thing often costs you something. But here's the promise. When you protect your character, when you refuse to compromise yourself, even when it costs you everything, Allah sees it. And even if the reward doesn't come in this life, it will come in the hereafter. Yusuf's prison led to a palace. Your resistance might lead somewhere you can't imagine yet. But even if it doesn't, even if you suffer for doing right, you'll still have the most important thing. You'll have yourself, your integrity, your soul, and nobody can take that from you. The story of Prophet Yusuf and the locked room, one of the most powerful stories in the Quran, not because it's dramatic, but because it's real. Every single person watching this has been in a locked room, a moment where you were alone with temptation, where nobody was watching, where it would have been so easy, and in that moment, you had a choice. Some of you chose like Yusuf did, and it cost you something, but you kept your soul, and I want you to know that choice mattered. Some of you gave in, and you're living with the regret, and I want you to know, it's not too late. Yusuf's story doesn't end in the locked room. It doesn't even end in the prison. It ends in redemption, in elevation, in success. Your story isn't over either. And some of you are in your locked room right now. You're watching this video, and you know exactly what your temptation is. You know exactly what choice you need to make. Make the right one, not because it's easy, but because it's right. And trust that Allah sees you. If this story helped you, if it gave you strength for a choice you need to make, let me know in the comments. And if you want more stories like this, where we explore the psychology behind the prophets and companion story, hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell. We drop new videos every week. Until next time, protect your character. Assalamu alaikum.